What is up, everybody? Give me a second to get settled here before I do go live. Before I start, I want to say that I live very close to a fire station, so if you hear sirens, there's going to be sirens at some point. There's nothing I can do about it. But I wanted to go live, get on my soapbox one more time about this season to talk about the cast. We always give a cast assessment at the beginning of the season. But I thought not, why not towards the end? We have 2 weeks left, less than I think. Give my assessment on how I feel after they've already played. And with this season, especially where so many of the players were ass, I think it is an interesting thing to do. And then later, I do want to talk about the Traitors a little bit as well. Maybe a few other things, but specifically today, it's going to be a lot of Big Brother talk per usual. Also, lives are not my element. There's something about a live that makes me want to, like, I don't know if it's an added pressure, but it makes me want to speed through all my opinions. So I'm going to try not to do that. But no guarantees. But if people join me in the chat, if you want to give your opinions on all these people we're going to go over after watching them all season or when they were eliminated, please do give me your opinions in the chat as well. I don't want to wreck everybody. There's some cast members I liked watching. Another nice thing I would like to say about the cast, since I'm going to shred a lot of them, but not all of them, I'm going to give my honest opinions on how I feel they were as players and how some of them have been since leaving the game. But as a whole, one good thing I would like to say about the cast is you never really knew this season what they were going to do. And a lot of that is because they were dumb, but nonetheless, it made for some unpredictable weeks. And I would take that over some big, giant steamrolling alliance any day. So that was a good thing about the cast. Shout out Ray in the chat. So we got to start with Zay if we barely remember him, because I barely do. I honestly only remember him for being Rachel's first big fight of the season. And I'm sure this is where Rachel haters who have the same capacity of thinking as Cali all got their bully accusations about Rachel from. Even though that fight was so tame, it was tame as hell as far as reality TV fights go. But one thing I also remember about Zay is that he truly was Vince's first victim too. Vince put him on the block despite them having a working relationship, and then Zay went home. So that was really the first time we saw Vince give his word to someone that he supposedly wanted to work with, but put him up anyway, and then that person went home. And then the last thing I remember about Zay is his first elimination. He was the first elimination, and Zach just bawling over him being eliminated. I really feel like that set the pace of how emotional these weak players were going to be this season. So Zay, forgettable, like a lot of first boots. I know he hooked up with last season's first boot, whose name I literally always forget, despite him always wanting attention. In fact, I want to look up his name real quick. Give me a second. Maybe somebody in the chat could help me. But who was the first eliminated player last season? Matt. See, he's so forgettable too. But he hooked up with Matt. They became this little first boot bromance when he left the game. Not fun. But Zay, first boot, a good first boot. I know, Ray, you're calling him Daddy Zay in the comments. Maybe. Amy was next eliminated. I wanted to like Amy, mostly because she was working with Ashley, and we all know I like Ashley. Amy was a mess. But my biggest problem with Amy is, like, she had no fight to stay in the game, which has been a recurring theme with some of this cast, as I just stated in the video I posted this morning. I have also discussed endlessly this season how good Ashley has been at reading the house all season, and clocking what everyone is doing. But when Ashley and Amy were together, Amy's reads were so bad that they distracted Ashley. So to me, that tells me all I needed to know, that Amy was never going to be this good player. But yeah, the biggest problem I had with Amy was how she allegedly left her job to be on the show, but then how do you go on the show and like have no fight to stay? Uh so yeah, she sucked. I don't like Amy anymore. I did at the beginning. Since she left the show, I don't really have any thoughts on Amy. I've seen her in like one chat with. I'm sure Jimmy was there because Jimmy's everywhere, as we all know, since he left the game. But no thoughts on her since leaving the game. I want to move on to Adrien, though. I have lots of thoughts on Adrien. I really tried with this kid. I knew I wasn't going to like him. I think I might have said this in my cast assessment. I know I definitely said it when the feeds first came on. I always have problems with people who get the super fan label on this show. So it already made it hard for me personally to want to root for him, because super fans come on this show and they always are terrible socially. And Adrien was that as well. And then when Adrien went on the block the first time, the thing I remember most about Adrien is him barely campaigning to stay. And I don't know how you call yourself a super fan, but then barely campaign to stay, which is why I think casting this season casted either very new fans or a bunch of recruits, but had them all pretend like they were the biggest super fans ever. Because that's how Adrien came off to me by the end of the season. He then, when he was on the block the second time, all we saw was that his game was like revolving around working with Zach. And despite it being Lauren's HOH, after being nominated by her, he still wanted to work with her and Zach, only to be voted out. So I truly do think in a season with a lot of bad social players, somehow Adrien is one of the worst. And I feel like after he was eliminated, he's getting like a rewritten game. I feel like people aren't seeing him for as bad of a game as he really played. I think that probably has to do with his super fan label. So other super fans wanted to give him more of a chance. But his social game was one of the worst. It really was. Let me read the chat real quick before I move on. Sandra says, "What a boring bromance." Yeah, Matt and Zay, I assume you're talking about. Agreed. Morgan said, "I've been rooting for Keanu, but I am so tired of being disappointed by his gameplay. It's too stressful, and I can't worry about his safety anymore. It comes down to Blockbuster once again." Yeah, I mean, if you've watched me all season, you know how I feel about Keanu. We'll get to the people still left in the game, though. Let's move on to Jimmy. I liked Jimmy in the game. I gave Mickey a lot of shit when he was blindsided by her, but Jimmy was a messy player. He played a low key version of Vince's game, which is actually crazy to me that Vince is still in and still playing the same Weasel game, but Jimmy's Weasel game ended so early. And while it was sloppy too, it was still more low key than Vince's. But I guess having an ally like Mickey, who thought she was the EST of Big Brother, the smartest, the strongest, the brightest, when her bulb was actually broken, Mickey could not see the bigger picture and sent him home. And it's still painful because not only did it obviously end Jimmy's game, but it hurt Mickey's game completely. And I still don't think she sees that. I don't know. I've not seen her talk about that specifically since the game ended, but as for Jimmy, we know he's been everywhere on social media. He's a bit of an attention hoe himself. But what I appreciate about Jimmy is that he appreciated reality TV. He was always trying to give us good TV, even though Keanu would get the better of him in fights every time. I also appreciate that once he was eliminated, he kept the bitterness towards Mickey and Morgan. But to me, it was more for fun on social media because once Mickey was eliminated, he wanted people to show her grace, even though she was still being bitter and messy in her exit interviews. So I do think Jimmy did a lot of things all in good fun. AR says Jimmy wasn't a genuine weasel like Vince. I agree. Ray is saying Jimmy was cool, but that's the type of person that would get on my nerves. I could only take Jimmy in small doses. Yeah, I guess that's fair assessment of Jimmy. And yes, Ray, Mickey thought she was the Bianca Belair of the Big Brother house, but not quite. All right, Zach was eliminated next. Ugh. I don't like Zach. I don't. Let's start by saying that. And I also feel like Zach was arguably the most overrated player of the season. So overrated that he actually sucked. Like there was a point in time I kept scratching my head on here on these videos on the channel, really not understanding how Zach was in as good of a position that he started the game as. He started the game not only with the power, but in a good position, but he never had the game sense to make his good position even better. Zach dropped so many balls this season. I don't even know if he still has any connected to him. Adrien was always bringing Zach info. He was like Zach's groupie, but Zach never took him seriously, I guess, or saw him as a real strong ally. But Adrien was always someone Zach could have used to either better his game or just used in the game, but he never did. And then Ashley's worst reads of the season was always Zach. And I can't blame her because Zach's game with Ashley actually made no logical sense. They had this buddy buddy relationship, would also talk about the game, but I don't see how Zach used Ashley in any game sense because Ashley thought they were close and they were, but then Zach would go around and tell anyone who would listen he hated Ashley, he wanted Ashley out, he wanted to make Ashley a have not. And instead of seeing Ashley as another puzzle piece for his game that he could have used, he yapped around the house until she eventually found out. And then she was against him after that, too. Zach dropped so many balls. Then, when he is on the block and he has his power, he doesn't use it. If you really follow Zach's game this season, it has to be up there with one of the worst. Of all the shit we gave Mickey, I don't know if I gave enough shit to Zach's game. Because looking back on it in retrospectiveness, it is a terrible game that he played. And on top of that all, I think Zach has been the most cringe outside of the game because he's still talking about Lauren, still rooting for Lauren, saying he isn't going to go on other dates because he's waiting for Lauren. And I just want to know if Lauren knows this herself. But it did actually work for Mr. Matt we were talking about from last season, who got his girl after a while. So maybe it does work out for Zach, but I don't see Zach as Lauren's type. And I don't think Lauren's family would accept Zach taking her to a debutante ball or something. So I can't see that really working out. But yeah, Zach in general, awful. Let's see what you all are saying. Blue Lady said Zach did nothing but flirt. I would have to agree. Ray says, I don't care for Zach either, and I'm glad he's catching shit online. The streets is hot on Zach right now. Yeah, it's because he keeps rooting for Lauren while like trying to shit on Morgan. And luckily on the feeds the last few days, Morgan's been finding out all this shit Zach was doing back then. AR says Zach was Matt 2.0. Ray says Zach was such a scumbag to go around saying he can't stand Ashley, but low key trying to flirt. Yeah, and it just was just such a drop ball on the Ashley relationship. Ray said, Zach, Lauren don't want you, fool. I don't think she does either, but maybe she'll surprise us all like MJ did. Who was eliminated next here? Ugh, Riley got his blind side next. I don't want to spend so much time on Riley. I mean, there's not more I can say about Riley other than that he was the worst casting choice of the season. I didn't see him there to play the game. He was there to be on a vacation, I guess. He was trying to just get in a showman's despite already having baby mamas out there. I guess he was looking for a new baby mama. I don't know what Riley's motivation was to actually come on this show because it wasn't to play the game. So he must have thought he was going to get his third baby mama. It's the only thing I can think of why Riley actually applied in the first place or agreed to join in the first place. We saw his control issues. He wouldn't give exit interviews after being eliminated, which I don't know how he got away with that in his contract, but I just hope Riley falls into obscurity or, pays child support at the very least. That would be nice. Maybe we'll find out more about Riley and his baby mamas in the future. I don't really care though, but let's see. Scrappy Doo said only good thing about Riley was how satisfying his eviction was. That's true. That was a satisfying part of the season. Lori is saying, so Zach is creeper status. I would say he's that way right now with Lauren. It is weird the way he acts about Lauren. Paula said, Lauren don't know who she wants, to be honest. That's true. She would just say, I don't know. Good point, Paula. Ray said, bye, Riley, next. Scrappy Doo said, do we think Riley will be at the finale night or not? Good question. I mean, if he didn't do his exit interviews and got away with that, can he really get away from his contract to do the finale? I think that's a harder thing to get away from, but at the same time, I know the show probably doesn't want the bad press, so maybe he can get away with it. AR said, who cast Riley deserves the blame. Yes. Morgan says, so nasty, so rude. And AR says Riley said he'll be there. So it sounds like Riley will indeed be at the finale for all of us to enjoy. Maybe we'll get a reunion with the next person that was voted out, that being Kat. Kat just basically followed her showmans right out the door. Kat was another non-player because not once all season did Kat have a cohesive game. I tried to look back on the season with Kat's game, and all I see is her dealing with Riley. I think she was also there for vacation, and she got into a showmance with Riley. I don't know if she got into a showmance with Riley because she thought it would help her game, or if she just thought it was part of her vacation. I don't know. Before they got closer, though, Kat showed that she had a nasty attitude. Kat was so nasty and so rude. And revisiting this history from Kat's stance is that without Riley on the season, Kat would have been likable and iconic. Please. Where? I saw nothing likable about Kat before she hooked up with Riley, and especially after Riley got eliminated. And iconic is definitely a stretch as well. So to sum up Kat's game, I just see her as a non-player. And as far as after the game, she seems to be distancing herself from Riley because she don't want no kids. Though I mean, Riley doesn't want the kids either, though. So maybe they can actually still get back together. I don't know. If Kat realizes that Riley don't want them kids either, she might get with him. Let's see. Scrappy Doo said, Kat brought nothing to the show for me. Agreed. AR said, Kat sat. Yes, that was her one iconic line, that she sat, and that is all she did, AR, is she sat all season. Good morning to you, Min. Scrappy Doo says, Kat being like, I'm a raging mad feminist in her intro, Where was that cat in the house? Nowhere to be found. Blue Lady said, "Who's cat again?" True. The only cat I know is on Beyond the Gates that I'm going to be watching in a couple hours. Ray Rush says, "Cat with the shower mess, putting 20 on." Yeah, cat did make the shower mess all the more worse. And Min said she took the iconic line from someone else too, apparently from a different show. Well, it sounds like Cat was just like Jimmy, I guess. So, Cat sucked. Next up was Mickey. I mean, what a season from Mickey. Mickey really put us on a roller coaster. The Mickey of the first few weeks seemed like she was going to be a rock star in this social game, but it turns out she might have been the most unhinged, compulsive liar this season. But to me, she did make for good reality TV. I mean, I talked mad shit about her game because it was very, very dumb at times, especially, of course, when she took Riley's HOH using her secret HOH. But it made no damn sense the way she went about it. It was in that moment, I think, when she finally got power, that something snapped in Mickey's brain, and like the brain power just fell out and left her on empty or something, because she knew that Riley, if he had kept the HOH, was going to put her on the blog with Morgan and Ashley. But somehow that week, Mickey convinced herself she was in good with the showman somehow. And she wasn't, because she had still nominated Riley that week, but she didn't nominate Kat. And she gave in to Riley's wishes to not nominate Kat. I still think it's because Mickey was obsessed with Riley too, and she still thinks he looks like Brad Pitt. I don't know if that's her compulsive lying or if that is what her eyes really see. If so, she should probably get them checked out. What cemented Mickey as a villain that week to me, though, was that Ashley and Rachel, along with Morgan, all played a part in making Riley not guess who had the power. But then she spent the next 2 weeks trashing Rachel and Ashley's games. Mickey's worst trait was turning on allies way too soon for people who did not fuck with her. That was the most head-scratching thing. But yeah, she was a villain. And as one of the commenters pointed out at some point in the videos, that Mickey and Rachel going back to back really killed the feeds. Because, like it or not, and sometimes I did not like it, Mickey was the drama a lot this season. So, in hindsight, I like Mickey outside of the game. I feel like she doesn't take herself too seriously. I do think Mickey is good reality TV. I will give her that. A bad player, but good reality TV. Let's see. Scrappy Doo said the only interesting pre-jurors to me were Jimmy, Mickey, and maybe Zay. Okay, well, I don't agree with Zay, but Jimmy and Mickey, I 100% agree as the only interesting pre-jurors. Scrappy Doo also said Mick Tater was a fun villain to make fun of. Yeah, I did have a blast during those 2 weeks when she was HOH and after, just shitting all over her. Ray Russ says, "Woo, child, Mickey drove me crazy. She was a damn menace." She actually was a menace. Catmom202 says, Timu Brad Pitt for sure. Not even Timu Brad Pitt. Like, he's like one of those, I don't know what they're called, the art pieces where the faces are like really mixed up. It ain't Brad Pitt, though, whatever his face looks like. AR said, Mickey, the biggest fall from grace. It's true. Ray says, Mickey, the power went to her head. I just imagine how she act at her business, just talking to folks anyway and micromanaging shit. Probably true. Scrappy said, Morgan has to now solo carry the feeds. It's true. Morgan really is the drama now because Rachel and Mickey left her. Well, we'll move on to Rachel. I don't really want to beat a dead horse with Rachel's elimination. I've talked about it so much. Rachel played the best social game she has ever played, having not been nominated as the only returning player up to jury, just to be eliminated by a random competition. I guess I will reiterate one more time, like I've done for weeks now, I feel like, is not getting nominated or voted out is not Big Brother. And frankly, that random elimination was not even the challenge. It was a bad decision from bad producers, a bad twist from bad producers. But yes, the irony of Rachel winning a season because of twists and then going home because of a twist, that irony also still stands. But I think Rachel added a lot to the season with too many boring non-players. Did production cast a bunch of boring non-players in the hopes that Rachel would get further? I guess. But then why have a stupid twist after all that? It just makes no sense to me. And it's why I call them bad producers every year. I think it honestly probably would have been more entertaining to have Rachel play her old game if she had known that at jury her social game wasn't even going to matter in the first place. We could have had way more intense Rachel fights instead of some of the cookie cutter Rachel fights we actually did. AR says Rachel leaving was painful. Scrappy Doo says, I think no matter what happens, Rachel is easily one of the top 3 players of the season, despite her BS placement. I mean, I can't disagree. Cat Mom says, how did the move go? I think you said you relocated across the country. Yes, I have. It was never fun to move, especially across the country, but it's going well so far. Ray said, Rachel, that hurt my head, my heart. Stupid twist. When will they fire Grodner? Apparently never. I don't know how Grodner will ever lose her job. She screws something up every season. She's done worse than this season and yet kept her job. So I don't see her losing her job this season. Blue Lady said Rachel was tired of these fools just like we are. She was. She had a hard time at some points holding it in, especially when Morgan kept talking about jury. That was, I think all of us were Rachel in that moment, even though it was bad socially for Rachel to get mad at Morgan. We all understood why she did. Mimi says, why do they hate us? CBS is a shit show. It really is. I personally think that all of their competition shows right now are at their worst and they need an entire overhaul. And Peacock's the only thing putting out some actually great reality TV. But maybe CBS will learn from them. I doubt it, though. Let's move on to Will, our latest evictee. I liked Will. Will was hilarious. I have 2 favorite things about Will. I thought he was so good in the diary room. Like, he gave the best commentary on the episodes. It felt real. It felt authentic, which doesn't happen these days on Big Brother episodes. But I also enjoyed Will's relationships in the house, notably with Ava and Ashley. I feel like when Will and Ava or Will and Ashley got together and had their shit talking sessions, it was some of the funniest times on feeds for me personally. I think Will had a great social game. I think he learned early on that he needed to minimize his target because he was probably going to be on the block a lot. And so he did play that up. He was great at being agreeable, which got him far, but he was way too passive of a player to ever win. I think you can be agreeable, but still sometimes push your own agenda. And I think Will was really lacking at pushing people to do things that maybe would have benefited his game. And frankly, maybe would have kept him in the game longer than he ended up staying. So he had a great social game, could have done more in strategy. Scrappy says, I also liked Will. I think he will be top 3 for AFP. I think he could be. Facebook has liked Will all season, which was surprising to me. So he does have a shot. AR said, Will saw them all, but just didn't have the energy. Maybe it was his age. He was around all these younger people. I can see that being the reason he was too passive. Min says, I'm sure Will and Rachel are having a chill, quiet time at the jury house right now. Sad as the situation is, yeah, the two oldest players, maybe Amy, that were there. So I think that they probably are having a good time together. Blue Lady says Hart, Will, and Ashley, they were a good duo to watch, and especially when they were having shit talking sessions. Ray says, I wouldn't be surprised if Will won AFP. However, I think it may go to Rachel. I'll be surprised if it's not Rachel or Keanu. I don't see Will winning AFP. I do think maybe he'll be in top three. Rachel has all of Twitter's support, but man, does Keanu have support out there, because the casuals think Keanu is just this big victim who everyone else was just coming after him, even though he's the one with the social game that caused it. But we're not at Keanu yet. I'm going to move on to Cali. Who I'm hoping goes home this week, but we'll see. Uh, she's my least favorite casting besides Riley. I don't know how they found this lady. Someone from the casting team must have grew up in like the bumfuck forest or something, because that's the only place they could have found Callie. Someone like Callie would have only gotten this far on this season where the blockbuster was relevant the whole season. She has refused to play the game. I've bitched and moaned about it all season. She has spent most of the season only giving Vince info, despite Vince screwing her over time and time again. She has, I guess, at least started to try and work with Lauren in the end game. And she's like playing a victim to make people like Rachel look worse, because Rachel didn't want to touch her one day and hug her, like sleeping with the dead bugs, all this weird shit. But like she wants to complain about others being bullies and terrible people. I don't understand Kelly as a person. And I think that's been one of my biggest complaints with Kelly. It's bad enough that she doesn't play the game, but I also just don't understand her motivation for being on this show. If you're not going to play, if you say you're going to stir the pot, are you then crying about it one day to Keanu? Like, yeah, Scrappy Doo says Kelly sucks. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, because it's true. Min says Kelly is just revolting. I don't know how else to put it. Fair. Min also said when they showed her intro package with her growing up in the woods alone, I knew she had to be a huge weirdo. Yeah, them bumfuck woods will fuck you up, apparently. I don't know. Scrappy Doo says Callie keeps talking about she's the fan favorite and how she'll gain loads of followers too. Can't wait for her to be humbled when she leaves. Honestly, only like one or two people gain followers from Big Brother these days anyway, so I don't know why people would think that, but it certainly wasn't going to be Callie. AR says she can give it but not take it. Yeah, she really does have like little sister energy, I guess. And her older siblings are wolves, because she was not raised with other humans, that's for sure. Let's move on. Who's left? I guess we'll talk about Ava. Ava entertained me a lot at the start. I think her relationship with Will helped her be more likable, because, like I said, they were a funny shit talking duo, especially the first month of the season. But as the game has gone on, Ava just slept more and more. And then, if that wasn't bad enough, that showed she was a lazy player. What grinded my gears is that she started to become upset with the people that were playing hard. And I could have gotten behind her more if she wasn't such a lazy player, because some players do overplay. But I don't feel like she was mad at players for overplaying. I feel like she was mad at players for playing, period. Ava is such a passive, lazy player that her getting upset with players playing made her so obnoxious to me over this past month. And I know a lot of Rachel stans are upset with Ava because she talks so much shit about Rachel still to this day. But that doesn't bother me as much as just her as a non-player and someone that seems to hate the game that she's on. I don't really respect Ava's lack of game. I've always praised her social game. She has always taken the approach of like trying to have one-on-one relationships, and it's paid off for her. I can't knock her social game too much. It's worked in the house, but she has definitely become one of my least favorites as the season has limped on here. Lori says, "Wow, dead bugs, gross." Yeah. Um, Kelly does love her dead bugs. Ray says, "I don't like Kelly microaggression saying Keanu looks scary with the dreads." Yeah, that was not shocking to me. I have always known that her and old other girl wanted their Sundown Town alliance. AR said, "Ava, another big downfall." Yeah, I think Ava's had a downfall to us as viewers, but I don't know if she's had a downfall in the game though, unlike Mickey. Like Mickey's downfall was viewers and the game. Ava's downfall is to our opinions of Ava. Scrappy Doo says all Ava does is sleep, get angry when someone tries to get her to play, and cry about not getting America's favorite player after screwing over Rachel. I mean, you're not wrong. Ray says Ava was my favorite in the beginning, but now she can go. I can't stand her attitude and laziness. Like, girl, wake up. This is Big Brother. Get your ass up. Couldn't agree, Ray. Couldn't agree with you more, Ray. I also liked Ava at the beginning. Not so much anymore. Min says Ava gets so mad whenever anyone tries to play the game with her. What did she think the show would be? I don't know. Maybe she thought she was on the real world. I'm him says Cali and Lauren deserve to lose if they can't even at least fake talking to the black people in the house. Yeah, I don't know how they're going to get them jury votes. Blue Lady says Ava playing to the cameras is cringe. Mimi says Cali being weird to try to be quirky and unusual. It's not working. Ray says Cali don't ever dance again. No rhythm, embarrassing. I'm not going to talk shit about Callie's dancing. I would be a hypocrite. Scrappy says Ava is another one. I can't wait to see their reaction when she isn't even the top 3. Do you think she's going to be so angry when that happens? She's going to have her angry face on when she's not in top 3. Crazy Blade says after last night till 5 in the morning, I don't like either one of those two. Yeah. I'm him says, who do you think will win at this point? I think it's very obvious Vince is winning this season. We'll get to Vince. I think Vince has the shot to win. Nobody who's played the game like Vince should have a shot to win, though. Let's move on to Keanu, because we're going to move on from a good social player like Ava to one of the worst social players of the season. I've said it all season. I'll say it again. Keanu only listening to Vince for the first half of the game was so abysmal. He said he wanted to work with Rachel, but never actually listened to her when she could have helped him. Then, even after he finally started to realize Vince kept screwing him, he nominates Vince to teach him a lesson, but still didn't want him out that week. Then Rachel goes, and Keanu slowly has to learn, because of the awful social game he has played, that he is kind of alone in the house. Even when he thinks he has Cali, he has to learn that she tried to get him out in the round if he hadn't won Blockbuster. Keanu came into the game, I think, with a huge ego. He thought he knew the game, and yet has had the most consistent bad reads of anyone I've ever seen on this show, on any show, because usually people that have those bad reads all the time go early, but because of the Blockbuster, it keeps people like Cali and Keanu around, and so we have to watch them be loud and wrong the entire season. And he still to this day wants to believe Vince, and he's willing to hurt others, willing to attempt to work with him, like Ashley the other day, him and Ashley having that plan that he's going to choose Ashley for veto, but then he chooses Morgan. It just doesn't make sense on a social level. And then he sits there and wonders why nobody wants to work with him. And I get that Ashley probably wasn't going to win the veto. And it might be a good thing Morgan did for Ashley's game. But for Keanu's game, socially, it didn't make any sense. I've never watched a season with a player like Keanu last this long, and it can be such a hard watch. Scrappy Doo says, didn't Keanu rat out Ashley to Vince this week? This man never learns. Basically, I would say I I don't know what to think of Keanu. I assume he probably ratted out Ashley, yes, but I don't know if Keanu was doing it in a way of saying, "Oh, Ashley wants to work with me to throw Vince off the trails of those two working together," or if he just wanted to throw Ashley under the bus. I don't know. Sang Freud Manor says they give me a headache. Ava called Rachel the C word and made me mad. I like Keanu. He might not be smart. He took a BB crash course before showing up in the house. He needed Rachel. I think he needed a lobotomy before he got into the house personally, but I guess he needed Rachel too. Ray says Keanu and his wide, dirty feet and getting in people HOH bed when they have been walking around barefoot all day. Yeah, that did piss off Vince at one point. One of his HOHs when Keanu kept getting in his bed with the dirty feet. Let's move on. I gotta wind down here. We'll talk about Ashley next. I mean, Ashley was my girl all season. The edit for the show for her, of course, has been terrible. And I say this as someone who does video editing. I mean, it doesn't take a genius, and I know most casuals are not geniuses, but it doesn't take a genius to see how poorly most episodes are edited, especially to anyone who watches feeds, because we know that they give edits that are complete opposites from what's really happening on feeds. I mean, it's crazy, but the show likes to attempt to make sure that most of the guys get some sort of fair edit. But the women this season did not get any sort of fair edit. Maybe Rachel. I feel like she was the only woman with a somewhat well rounded edit. I don't know why CBS shows fail the women on their competition shows. It's always been strange to me. All you have to do is edit them as well-rounded people too. But yeah, you only get very one-sided edits of Ashley on the episodes, which is her being dramatic. And Ashley is dramatic, but she has also had the best reads all season. She started to be my favorite because she's kind of dramatic and because, like a good Sagittarius, she was not afraid to say the most outrageous stuff to people's faces. And that's good reality TV. The people that keep it real actually do make for the best reality TV because they're keeping it real. But she also got to a point where at some point this season, she had to keep her closest allies like Rachel and Will on logical paths. There was a few weeks where she was pulling some strings from behind the scenes to keep her people on the right track. And furthermore, despite what this show and some others will try to make you believe, because producers are lazy and this production team is bad at their jobs and they think the audience is dumb, they have more and more people thinking that if you don't win comps, you haven't played a good game. And that's outlandish. It is so much harder to go far in the game with a target on your back and still get far without winning competitions like Ashley has done. There has been many weeks in recent weeks, especially, where Ashley's name was in the HOH's mouths and as like a potential target, and she avoided the block by playing hard and frankly maybe having a better social game than even I have given credit to her, and I've given her a lot of credit. So you're not going to make me talk shit about Ashley today. I wanted to go. Oh, thank you, Blue Lady. I appreciate it. I wanted to be positive about Ashley. She's been my favorite all the time. But yes, thank you, Blue Lady, for the donation. Appreciate that. Let's see. Jazz Lady says, hello. Ashley definitely gets a poor edit. She does, but most of the women have. Sapphire says, the show was intent on creating a negative narrative on Ashley from the get-go, and they haven't let up. It's true because They edited Ashley like she really did take a 2-hour shower when we all know now it was only a half an hour. But the show made us believe like Vince and Kat were telling the truth when they weren't. So that alone proved that Ashley did indeed have a negative edit from the beginning, and they haven't let up. AR says Ashley has never had power and is still there, which is the markings of a good social game. I think where Ashley's social game can go wrong is that she can say too much. She's a gossip, and sometimes she says too much and it does get back to people. But something in her social game has been working. Scrappy Doo says she has saved herself so many times and the show doesn't show it. Yeah, the biggest one was Lauren's first HOH when Ashley knew it was between her and Adrien. Ashley fought so hard to stay in the game. And of course, they didn't give her credit for it. Isis Blue says, at this point, Ashley for the win. I wish it would be nice. Devin says, Keanu's going to get eliminated this week, and I'm going to be upset about it, but I guess Finney's my number 2. We got to find you some better number 1s and better 2, Devin. Maybe next season we can help you find some better number 1s and number 2s. Sapphire says, BB US production team needs to take a hint from the old BB Cam production team. Yeah. Some of the earlier seasons, some of the later seasons of BB Can also had bad editing, in my opinion. Thank you, I'm him, for the donation. We will never forget what they did to Rachel. I hope that they learn from their mistake, because CBS is not going to fire this production team. Let's let it be known. We all think they should. I've thought for many years that they should, but they never do. So I fear that either they learn from their mistakes and maybe finally stop having terrible twists, maybe just let people play the game more, and I guess have better casting, but it is what it is. Lori says they should hire you as the producer for next season. I mean, I wish, but I don't see that happening. Blue Lady says Ashley is messy, but we love her. It's true. Crazy Blade, Lauren, and Ava Cali are my favorites. Ugh, I might have just gotten indigestion from that, Crazy Blade. No offense. Scrappy Doo says those 3 are my least of everyone left. Those 3 are probably my least faves as well. Although, no, they're my least faves. Let's move on, though. Let's talk about Morgan next, I guess. I think Morgan is actually quite a good player. It's a shame that Morgan is so boy crazy despite being in her early 30s. And what comes along with her being boy crazy is her insecurities. It is quite a distraction for her in the game. Honestly, other players should probably be thankful that she has that distraction with her insecurities, because if she didn't have that distraction, I think she might have dominated this season the way the end game has looked. Morgan ran Mickey's secret HOH way back when. She pushed for Jimmy. She saved Vince when she had to that week. She made up with Rachel when Rachel started to have problems between her and Morgan, when Rachel got so upset that Morgan kept bringing up the jury thing like we talked about earlier. Rachel nominated Morgan, but Morgan made up with her that same week while being on the block, which to me was the first big indication how good Morgan's social game could actually be. Will and Ashley were responsible for making the judges, but it was Morgan, in my opinion, who pounded it into Vince's head on his second HOH and saved Rachel from going up on the block that week. Morgan has protected Ashley all season, despite Ashley sometimes being messy when she goes around saying things about Morgan and Zach, now about Morgan and Vince. And now Morgan has become a veto queen. She's winning a bunch of vetoes in the end game, some of which she has needed to save herself. But in saying all of that, she has now become obsessed that she needs to be Vince's number 1, or if she's not, Lauren is, and it's like become this really bad distraction. In fact, as I think about Morgan's game, I try and analyze it, and I see, like, is her loyalty a problem? Like, dare I say that Morgan's loyalty is her biggest issue because she's kind of been loyal to the wrong people when it came to Zach, Mickey, Vince. She was eventually rightfully wanting Mickey out when she learned about some of the stuff Mickey was doing. And now she's learned about some of the stuff Zach was saying about her when Zach was, friend zoning her or whatever. I don't know. But now she's so connected to Vince, who's the biggest weasel in the house. So in some ways, I do feel like Morgan's loyalty maybe hurt her. But I still think she's a great player. I still think she can win the game. I don't know how the jury will see her and Vince's relationship. That is the biggest question mark I've had for weeks now, as I've been talking about it for weeks now. Let's see what y'all are saying. Min says Morgan is iconic. I love how she never lets up. She truly is relentless. She really doesn't let up. She wants her way at all times. And I do respect that, even though it's gotten redundant the past few days of feeds. I can't not respect Morgan's game. Sapphire says Morgan won't get out of her own way. It's exhausting. It's true. Scrappy says Morgan is good TV, and I love how she's always playing the game. One of the best recruits in a while. I can't disagree. Sapphire says Morgan's persistence in the game might be her saving grace. The girl is relentless. Devin says funniest thing ever is going to be when Vince doesn't get any of the 3 women after this game. You think he's going to lose all 3? Probably. Sangfreud says, yeah, Morgan should cut Vince out and go with Ashley and Keanu if she's so concerned. It's annoying that there isn't any real backdooring people anymore. Agreed. The backdoor being eliminated also kind of hurts strategy. But I agree with you, Sangfreud, that Morgan should just cut Vince and go with Ashley and Keanu. She would have to compete with Keanu in some competitions, but having Ashley there, who lately has sucked in competitions, it's a fine choice. It's better than Vince continuing to let Morgan and Lauren be these huge distractions for each other, although it's distracting Morgan a lot more. I guess we must move on to Vince. I think Vince is such a slimy individual. Like, comments that some of you have left on my videos this season, you've called Vince a weasel. You've called Vince a con man. You've called him a narcissist. I think someone called him a sleazeball. Look, he's another competition show villain. Vince is another person like Mickey who lies as much as he breathes. Vince and Mickey had that in common. I think the biggest difference between the two, him and Mickey are both liars, but Vince has had a good read on who is actually his allies, and Mickey certainly did not. Vince also has a way where the non-players like Cali, the dumb players like Keanu will keep helping him with information no matter how many times he screws them. He has made all of these final twos that's now kind of biting him in the ass. And yet his whole victim act does seem to make people always want to go back to him with info. Vince has played like this weird puppet master type game, but I guess he gets away with it by playing the victim. I don't know. It's a far messier and sloppier game than Paul or Tyler ever played. And both of those two had quite the bitter jury because their puppet master games got sloppy. And yet, despite Vince's being sloppier than both of theirs, it's so out in the open, I can still see him winning, which I guess just truly sums up the cast, that someone as sloppy as Vince with no finesse whatsoever could still win. I think that speaks for itself. Min says, imagine if Lauren could actually pivot and Morgan and her team up against Vince. That will never happen, though. Scrappy Doo says, I mean, Vince is undeniably one of the main characters, but yeah, he's such a weasel. Yeah, Vince has been a main character since week one, unfortunately, but he's still around. Morgan says your updates have made this season way more entertaining. Thank you, Morgan. Sangfreud says Vince does have a messy game, but if he does get to the end, then I'd see him winning too. I do think there's people he might not win against, but he should have some good shots against some of these people that are left, despite him playing this messy ass game. Is that the whole cast? Oh no! Well, I am forgetting someone. The most forgettable casting choice of the season. Yes, Lauren is the last one to talk about, which there's not much to say, honestly. To sum up Lauren's game, I guess I could just repeat 75% of her chatting with others have been, I'm scared. It's scary. I don't know. I just don't know. The fact that Lauren could win if she is at the end with Vince and there is a bitter jury it's worse to me than Vince winning, because someone that cannot even talk to most of the cast should not be winning a social game. And I know that this season production wants us to think that only the competitions matter this season, but it's still a social game at heart. And Lauren's social game has to be the worst. I shit on Adrian's social game. It was bad. Keanu's is bad because he's so dumb. But Lauren doesn't really have one, either because she refuses to speak to people or she literally can't get it out to people. But either way, whatever the reason is, that is a terrible social game. That's true. I am saying it too fast to be Lauren Johnson, but I don't have all day, unfortunately. Jazz Lady says, yes, your updates are superb. Thank you, Jazz. Dina the Explorer, shout out to Dina, says Vince is a piece of shit. It's true. Scrappy says, Lauren is so boring. The show can't even hide it. She's only relevant due to Morgan's jealousy of her. Yeah. Well, that about summed up what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about the Traitors 2 today, but I don't have a whole lot of time left. I just want to say about the Traitors winning last night's Emmy again for the best reality show at the Emmy, or best competition show at the Emmys. First of all, Big Brother's never going to win. Not with these producers. They don't even I don't think they've ever been nominated. There should have been maybe some seasons in the early days that they should have been nominated, but these days there's no way this production team's going to get an Emmy. I didn't love season 3 of The Traitors. I thought they deserved to win for season 2, which was a great season. Season 3 wasn't my favorite, but like some of these other nominations, I don't know if any of you watched Top Chef or The Amazing Race or Survivor seasons 47 and 48, which no way they should have even been nominated either. But RuPaul's Drag Race is probably the only one I can see maybe topping The Traitors. But yeah, as I said in my video earlier today, if there's any other shows that you want me to yap about, I'd be glad to do it. I used to do Survivor. Modern seasons kind of get on my nerves. As I said in the comments earlier, I find The Amazing Race boring, but it is a Big Brother theme this season, so I might watch that, I guess, this season. We'll see. But yeah, CBS reality shows are kind of a struggle these days. They're all very similar to Big Brother. They all have a production problem. And even though I think the Traitors over on Peacock made some production errors in season 3, it's still going better than the CBS shows. I didn't actually watch the Emmys, Devin. I don't really love award shows. I feel like they always get it wrong. Min says, I'm curious, what do you think about other podcasts? Rob has a podcast and the like. Well, Dina, who's in the comments, is the only one that I check out. I don't really ever agree with Rob has a podcast, although I haven't watched them the past 2 seasons. So maybe they've gotten better. But back in the day, I never used to agree with them. I feel like a lot of podcasters kind of love to talk about the popular opinions a lot, or just love to talk about the like I don't know, when something derogatory gets said, we got to beat that over the head. I kind of get sick of talking about that. But yeah, the other shows, whatever. I don't watch any of them except Dina. So let's see. Dina said in the comments, but why was the bear in the comedy category? I need answers. I've been wondering that for a couple seasons now because it is not a comedy at all. Air says love Top Chef. I've seen a few seasons, but not enough. Devin says you watching Dancing with the Stars. No, sorry. I am going. Oh yes, AR Australia versus the World Survivor was great. I did watch that. It was great. It's way better than the current seasons of American Survivor, unfortunately. But what should have been nominated was actually Love Island. How that wasn't nominated, not this past season, but season 6 last season, definitely one of the best reality TV seasons I've seen in ages. It's probably just going to get trashier and trashier, but Love Island Games 2 does start tomorrow, which I will be checking out and I will be talking about. Anyway, I got to go eat lunch. I want to thank you all for joining me. It was a fun live. I want to do this at least a few times a week with something to talk about. I don't know which shows it will be, but I'm sure I could rant about something. Even if it's my Dallas Cowboys or something, I might have to rant about them at some point. Anyway, thank you all. I will see you all tomorrow for an update.